And welcome to another edition of the All Angels podcast. I'm with Kennedi Landry, the MLB writer for the Texas Rangers. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. First off, congratulations. This is your first year as a Texas beat writer. So, how's it feel to be on the beat?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's kind of surreal, honestly. Obviously, it's all crazy because of COVID restrictions, and I haven't really met any of the players or like the people that you talk to on the daily basis, you only see them through Zoom. So that's been really weird. But, being on this beat's amazing. It's almost like a dream. Just being on a professional sports beat is just crazy. And I'm enjoying every second of it, even if it's virtual.
Yeah. Were you a softball player? Did you enjoy baseball growing up? What kind of led you to the baseball side of things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I played softball for basically my entire life, starting from, like T-ball when you're in like kindergarten through high school and travel ball and all that. So I love softball. Honestly, sometimes I prefer softball to baseball if I'm watching it. Like, I feel like sometimes there's a bit more action, it's a bit more fun, but I love baseball, I love softball. I'm from New Orleans. I went to LSU, so LSU has a great baseball and
Yeah,
softball program.
definitely.
So
Yeah.
we don't have professional baseball in Louisiana, so you gravitate to LSU and the college sports scene for the most part. So I was big LSU fan growing up, and they won a national championship 2009 when I was young. So that's always been really fun. So, and like I said, the softball team's amazing too, and I'm a big softball fan.
And like you mentioned, you were over there in Arizona with spring training. A mutual friend, I guess you want to say, wanted me to ask you: have you found a good coffee place yet out there?
I've stuck to my national brand. I've stuck to Starbucks for the most part since I've been here. I know I love like local coffee shops. Usually when I'm places, I like to find a nice local spot. But just because of COVID, I don't really want to like sit somewhere like I normally would. If like
Right.
in a normal year, you would sit out at a coffee shop and do work and stuff like that. But I've stuck to Starbucks for the most part. And I went to what's that place called?
Dutch
Something
Bros.
Bros.
Dutch
Yeah,
Bros.
I went
Yep.
there yesterday for the first time, which it was great. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that. The nitro cold brew, which had me on like 1,000. My energy was on 1,000 yesterday because of that cold brew, but it was great.
Yeah, we'll go out there every once in a while. This is like the first year in 5 or 6 years as of, me and my wife haven't gone to Tempe, but every time she's out there, being from California, there isn't any Dutch Bros out here. That's like we have to make that stop. And I'm like, all right, either before the game, after the game, but yeah, Dutch Bros. From what I hear, I'm not a big coffee person. You can't go wrong.
Oh, I'm a coffee person. I'm a
Uh,
big coffee person.
so now kind of moving into Texas, obviously last year wasn't the year they wanted. Um, fifth place in the division. Again, this is your first year on the beat, but have you got any sense of what went wrong for them last year, or what they kind of hoped would have happened but didn't?
I think what went wrong last year is the guys they expected to perform didn't. When you look at Joey Gallo, especially, he went from a all-star season in 2019 where he belted, I think, 20 something home runs, to last year he was batting below 200. And obviously, take everything with a grain of salt from last season, just it being a 60-game season. And
That's
guys,
true.
if you were hot at the right time, that really worked out for you. If you were a player who starts hot and just goes for it, like, the 60-game season worked perfectly. And I think some guys, especially on the Rangers, felt the need to rush through the 60-game season, and that way they didn't have enough time to adjust and get, come into themselves, especially some of those younger guys. I think pretty much everybody except for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa had a drop in batting average last year, which obviously is not what you want to see
Right.
to compete in this league. I think it's across the board. You look at even Nick Solak, who's a young guy, his batting average dropped, I think, from 280 to like 240 or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head. And Ruben Odor has obviously struggled a lot, and even Elvis, who now is with the A's, and with the interdivisional trade that we had there, his batting average dropped a bit. And Guzman has obviously had his issues at first base on the offensive end. So I think that was the biggest issue for the Rangers last year, is that the veteran guys who they expected to contribute kind of didn't. And, the pitching was not up to par. And I think that was also a big issue just last year across the board. Was we only had 60 games, guys weren't pitching the normal lengths that they normally would, and things like that, which was a struggle. And I think only 3 pitchers for the Rangers had less than a 3 ERA. And obviously that's not how you win games. You can't hit,
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
pitch. What else is there? So there was a lot of trouble. They struggled a lot pretty much everywhere. And yeah, I see you have up on the screen. They played not amazingly at home, but they had a winning record at home, and they
Right.
were absolutely terrible on the road.
On the road, yes.
It was like pretty ridiculous how bad they were on the road. So I think, there's a lot of things to be fixed this year, and I think now they've kind of accepted the rebuild that they're in. I think trading Elvis might have been the big start of that, is that they recognize where they are as a team and as an organization right now, and they're working on getting back. I think John Daniels, the president of baseball ops, said in a press conference a week or two ago, he's like, we're shooting for 2022 and beyond. And, that's not to say they're not going to try to win games this year, but, they are not expecting to truly compete in the postseason until 2022.
And you kind of mentioned that home record, 16-14. New stadium, Globe Life Stadium or Globe Life. One was the old, one was the new. I can never keep them apart.
Globe Life Park is the old one. Globe Life Field is the new one.
Field is the new one. Yeah, I get confused about that all the time. But have you got any reactions from some of the players? Because, coming into a new stadium, you're not sure if it's going to be a hitter-friendly, pitcher-friendly, or anything like that. Have you got any kind of feedback from players about how they liked or maybe even disliked the new field?
I think for the most part, they've all seemed pretty favorable to it, and especially with the Texas heat. I mean, everybody was happy to have a roof over their head. Everybody was happy for that. And I think Joey Gallo talked today about just it wasn't really positive or negative for him. It just was something to get used to. And again, this goes back to a shortened season, that when you're in a new stadium and you have to get used to, where balls are. If it bounces here, is it going to go like over my head, or is it going to, and things like that. You have to get used to things like that. And I think that might have been another issue for the team, is just trying to get used to a new park in a shortened season when, maybe they were starting to get used to it come, August, but you don't have as many games left as you would have, type of thing.
Right.
So I think, I haven't heard anything, like I said, positive or negative per se, but I think everybody is still trying to get a feel for this new park. And I haven't been yet. So, I'll get my first taste of that in a couple of weeks, but I think that's left to be seen if it's a hitter friendly park or a pitcher friendly park and things like that.
Yeah, just like anything, like you mentioned earlier, anything in the 2020 season, whether it's a new park or a new, player, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, just not big enough sample size. So you kind of touched on some of these already, some transactions that happened throughout the offseason. You talk about Elvis Andrus, but another big one that I want to talk about first is Lance Lynn to the White Sox. Through trade, he was for them, that rotation ace for the season. A great beginning of the season, kind of fell off a little bit at the end. Do they have someone that they feel comfortable with, like getting the opening day start, or someone that can carry this rotation?
I think that's yet to be seen. The opening day starter is going to be Kyle Gibson, he's a veteran. He's been here for a while. He had I think a 5.3 ERA last year, which isn't great, but I think they just want to hand that opening day starter to somebody who they know can, give them innings right now. So that's why it's going to be Kyle Gibson. But I'm glad you touched on the Lance Lynn trade, because I love Dane Dunning, who the Rangers got in the Lance Lynn trade. He's a prospect. I think he's number 3 in the new rankings that came out this week in the Rangers farm system. I think that's going to be a trade that works out really well for both the White Sox and the Rangers. Lance Lynn obviously goes to basically a contender while the Rangers are rebuilding, and Dane Dunning's going to be, I think down the stretch, he'll end up being, a number 1 or 2 starter for the Rangers. And I think it's very likely he'll be their best starter this year, depending on how a few other things shake out with, Gibson. You have Fulte up there, and Arihara is another big one, the acquisition from Japan. So a lot of things really have to fall into place. But Lance Lynn leaving, I think, worked out. He did have the most innings pitched on the team, I think, as you touched on, which I think is going to be a big issue coming from the 60-game season over to a full 162-game season in terms of pitchers across the board. I think some aren't going to know how to adjust to only throwing X amount of pitches last year to going back to a regular workload. And I think that's a big part of the reason for some of the spring training rules, I think that MLB implemented with the
Yeah, I
rolling
can
of the
see that.
innings and
Yeah.
things like that. You want to keep these guys healthy in the spring, especially these veteran guys who like they're not technically trying out in spring training like some other guys, like those borderline non-roster invites and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how all of these guys develop going it back to a full workload. And the Rangers don't currently have anybody on the team who pitched more than like 40 innings last year, I think. So that's going to be it's going to be an uphill climb for them. I think when you look at the rotation, I think only three guys are currently, 100% going to be in the starting rotation. And that's Mike Folty. I really stray from pronouncing his name because I don't want to pronounce it wrong. So I just say Folty.
That makes perfect sense.
And I mean, that's Woodward calls him Folty, so I'll call him Folty. And Kohei Arihara, like I said, from Japan, and Kyle Gibson. I think
That
those
was a
other
hard
two
name
spots.
too.
Yeah, no, I caught on to Arihara. I did catch on to that one because that one's it's more phonetic, I'd say.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It looks exactly how it's said, and I appreciate that. This Eastern European name doesn't vibe with me at all, but I think, again, like I said, that's going to be interesting to see how those things play out. I think Dane Dunning, and I'm really high on Dane Dunning. I think he's going to be a great asset for the Rangers this year, and I think he's going to be in that starting rotation. And then the last spot can go to a number of different people, especially when you look at prospects. You have, Kyle Cody, Taylor Hearn. You're going to see a little bit of shakeup. I think it's what you get on the first day of the season is going to be nowhere near what you get in June.
Right.
Is not going to be what you get in October. So there's going to be some shakeups, and I'm interested to see, how Chris Woodward deals with all of these things.
So another one, like you kind of mentioned earlier, Elvis Andrus departing to Oakland for the inter division trade. Elvis Andrus, to me as an Angel fan, it seems like he's been there forever, and to see him leave. And then you see, as Angel fans, you see Chris Davis at Oakland, and it always seemed like he could be in the worst slump. But when the Angels either come to town or they come to Anaheim, he was able to produce, and you're just thinking to yourself, why us? What are their plans, for Chris Davis? Is he going to DH? Is he going to be in the outfield? Any word on that yet?
He's definitely going to DH, if anything. And I think Chris Woodward has embraced a culture of competition in this organization at the current moment. I think we're seeing that across the field. Nobody has a position locked in unless your name is Joey Gallo right now, for the most part, or Isaiah Connor for left was pretty much locked in at shortstop. But everything else, you have to win your spot. And I think Chris Davis and Willie Calhoun are basically competing for that spot at designated hitter. And Willie is a better defender than Chris Davis, so if Willie needs to go play in left field, he will. I don't see the Rangers using Chris Davis as an outfielder, and I think Woodward and Chris Young, the general manager, have both kind of alluded to that. And then, which you also have David Dahl up there, which he's another cog in this, because you assume he's going to play left field, but he could also play center field if Leody Taveras, who's the number 3 prospect or number 2. I get them all confused at this point. Those top 5 prospects. Yeah, all those prospects, you're like, I know these are all like there and they're good. I just don't know which one fell where. But, the DH and the outfield, those two competitions really blend together. And, I think they balance off of each other, because if Leody Taveras needs to get, another month or 2 in AAA, then David Dahl is going to end up playing center field, and then Willie Calhoun will play left and Chris Davis will play DH. But if Taveras is ready at the start of the season on opening day to play center field in the big leagues, then David Dahl plays left field, and then you have to choose between Chris Davis and Willie Calhoun at DH. And I think Chris Woodward has brought up a couple of times, it's whoever's hot at a specific time, or, left-handed versus right-handed hitters and pitchers and things like that might end up being what drives it, this competition. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And neither Chris Davis or Willie Calhoun has been spectacular so far this spring. I think they both have 2 or 3 hits apiece. So I think they're definitely going to need to see a little bit more from both of them.
Yeah, and another person you talked about a little bit earlier is Rougned Odor at second base. He seemed to have a struggle last year. Are they hoping from a bounce back? Do you know if it was like an injury kind of deal? Was it just, some, especially veteran players, it takes a little bit longer to kind of get going, but in a 60-game season, by the time you're getting going, like you mentioned, you're in August, September, and it's season's already over. Do they know why he struggled so much, or are they looking for him to have a bounce back year?
I don't really think anybody knows why Ruby was really struggling as much as he was, and he doesn't seem to know much either. I think um, he just really he struggled, and I don't think we talked to him once so far this spring, and he just said, he's worked in the off season. He thinks he's going to bounce back, but I personally, it's hard for me to see how much longer the Rangers can keep him, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I think Nick Solak has not been handed the position at second base, but the organization has basically told him, if you go out and win this, you go and perform, it's yours. And so then Rougned Odor is now has to compete for the spot at third, which is another
Okay.
there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of shuffling going on here because Odor, if he doesn't win the spot at third, then he has to show, or at second, he has to show that he can be versatile. He could be, an extra out infielder or utility infielder when they need it. And I think before the Elvis trade, I was under the assumption, and I think most people were under the assumption that Elvis would play third base. So, now Odor has to, plug into a position he's never played before, and he's played it well. So as far as, we're 8 games in the spring training right now.
Yeah.
He's fielded most things cleanly. He's made a couple of really good diving stops. And for the most part, like he's showing that he can be a utility infielder. But I mean, that was never really the problem anyway. The problem was at the plate. And I think he's had a, solid first week and a half of spring. He has quite a few hits. He had a bunt for a hit today. That was really good. It's kind of, you have to see where it falls. And I'm just not sure why. I'm not sure what the Rangers will do if he's not up to standard, because that's a lot of money they have on the books for him.
And has he been playing? I didn't know he was actually playing third during this time at spring training. Has he been just exclusively at third, or has he gone back to second, maybe an inning or two here and there?
I think he played the first 2 or 3 games of spring at second. And then he actually went to Chris Woodward and said, I want to play third. He's been taking, he had been taking ground balls at third, during practice and things like that, and just during like live BP. But I think he sees the writing on the wall as well. I mean, you have to when you're a major league player and, this type of situation. And I think he knows that in order to make a spot on this opening day roster, he needs to be able to play third base. So, I think for the last 5 or 6 games, he's almost exclusively played third base.
That's good on. I didn't know that. So, again, kind of moving now forward into the 2021 season coming up. First thing I want to ask: strengths and weaknesses of this team.
Strengths. I think they can be. I think they can be really good at the plate. I think we've seen the ups and downs of that in the spring so far, but I think if those players that we think should do perform, they'll be in a much better place. And I think defensively, outside of pitching, I think defensively this is a very good defensive team when you have your starting 9 out there. When you look at Joey Gallo, Leody Taveras, and most likely David Dahl or Willie Calhoun in the outfield, not many things are falling out there. And the infield, you have a Gold Glover in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, you have Nick Solak. And whether it's Guzman or Lowe at first base, I'm almost confident. And both of them are great defensive first basemen who have both made fairly great plays so far this spring. And third base can go a number of ways, whether that's Odor or Brock Holt, Charlie Culberson, a couple of non-roster invite guys that kind of are working there. I think the defense is probably its strength, I guess you'd say. And I think but that's also interesting because then the weakness comes down to the hitting. Not the hitting, the pitching, where
Okay.
I don't want to say it's a weakness, but there's just so many
Question marks.
unknowns. Yeah, there's unknowns and unprovens there right now. And you have a lot of guys who really have the stuff to be elite major league pitchers, but don't have the innings, just, whether it's a combination of the shortened year last year and injuries or anything that may be. I think there's question marks on how that'll look. And, like I said, last year was a down year for the entire bullpen, with only, 3 guys with below 3 ERA. And I think we're going to see some growing pains. And, I hope if Mike, it's Fultonevich, there we go.
Fultonevich, yep.
If Fultonevich,
Fulty.
if Fulty bounces back, if, Arihara can adjust to major league pitching and Dane Dunning can be the elite prospect that I think he is, then that's best case scenario. And I think it's might take a bit, and it'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, Fultonevich, looking back on his career, like, what was it, like 2 years ago, he had a great year on the mound, where I believe with Atlanta. And if he can, kind of get back to somewhat close to that, that definitely helps out a rotation that probably needs that little bit of help. You kind of mentioned the farm system. The top 30 came out not too long ago for a lot of the MLB teams, if not all the MLB teams. But in your opinion, where is the farm system as far as status? Is it like, top half? Is it bottom half? Is it, young but promising? What do you think about the farm system with Texas?
According to MLB Pipeline, it's not top 10, but I think it is top half of the league. I think the Rangers were in this such a weird spot for so long, where they weren't bad enough to get these top 10 picks, but they also right, and they just weren't going to the World Series every year. So you have these middling 20s to 30s picks every year. But I do think this is a young and promising farm system, especially if you look at around the top 10. There's some really great, guys in the farm. And I think so many of these guys made their debuts last year during the COVID season, which is just weird. Just,
yeah.
There were so many guys within the system that shot from low A to their major league debut, just because of the nature of how weird this last year of our lives has been.
Congratulations. So, here you go.
Basically they just plucked the guy from the alternate site and said, go across the street. Here you are. So again, I think it's a young and promising farm system. And I think they have the number 2 pick this year. So we're going to grab one of those Vandy boys.
Yeah.
I hope they grab a Vandy boy. I'm an SEC
SEC,
kind of girl.
I was about to say SEC through and through. There you go.
Look, I've seen Kumar Rocker in the flesh at the SEC tournament a few years ago. The dude is just as great as he seems, and I haven't seen Lighter in real life, but I've watched him on TV, and they're both really good. And I did a prospect inbox today where I took Twitter questions, and somebody asked when the Rangers draft one of the Vandy boys, where are they going to fall on the prospects list? So I talked to one of our pipeline writers, and he basically was like, oh yeah, whatever Vandy boy you get is going automatically to the top of the Rangers list. It is going to be the number 1 prospect. And I mean, I can agree with that. I think both of them reach 100 miles an hour on the gun. I think the first 3 pitchers that Jack Leiter threw this season were 100, 102, and 104 or something crazy like that. They're both elite talents. I think Leiter has more pitches, and Rocker just has more pure power, and dude's basically a linebacker pitching, honestly. And it's crazy. I think Leiter has a little bit more spin on his pitches than Rocker does, but honestly, it's a 1A and 1B pick in this draft, in my opinion. So I think that's gonna be a big.
That's gonna help. Yeah, I know a lot of Angel fans too. Towards the end of last year, when I mean, they were never really out of it, but a lot of fans were clamoring for the Angels to tank because of that, because they knew what was coming up through, like you mentioned, through Vanderbilt with the two Vandy boys. But you kind of mentioned it a little bit, players making a debut this season. There was a handful of players that made a debut last season, but if there's anyone, even those included, that might start out in AAA or obviously the AAA season got delayed a little bit, the alternate slate, and be brought up later in the season to make I don't know if an official debut in a 162 season or something like that. Is there a guy that can make some noise this year?
Oh yeah, I think Josh Young is the one everybody's waiting for. All the Rangers fans want to know how Josh Young is doing. He was the first rounder, I think, in 2018, if I remember off the top of my head, out of Texas Tech a few years ago. He's a third baseman. And I think that's also something when I was talking about the Odor situation earlier, no matter who wins the third base spot this year when it comes to the opening day roster, it's a placeholder for when Josh Young makes his debut come June, July, August. I think Josh Young is honestly he's a talent. Like, he is an elite defensive third baseman, like, if I've ever seen one. And, I think that Chris Young, Chris Woodward, John Daniels, they want all of these guys to just get more games and get more at bats. And I think that's why so many of these guys just aren't going to start on the major league, like, opening day roster, because they just want them to get at bats, like we said, and get innings when it comes to pitchers. So that's what Josh Young is going to start in AAA. But unless he, tears it up with like batting 500 in the first month, I think I would project him to make his debut come, July, August, around then. I think he's the third baseman of the future. And I think the organization has not been shy about saying that. And I'm really excited to see what he does on the major league level. And, he's played quite a few spring training games, had a few hits. And like I said, he's an elite third baseman defensively.
Yeah, those are some pretty big shoes to fill too, with Beltran leaving there, only a couple of years ago. But a third baseman is defensive third baseman from experience, having now Anthony Rendon there for the Angels for last year is definitely a plus to have. In spring training, we're about like a week and a half into spring training as we're recording this. Is there a position battle in that time frame that's really kind of heating up and really interesting to watch play out the rest of the way?
Well, everywhere on this team.
That's true,
but most specifically, I've been really enjoying the first base battle. I think, like we said, Guzman has struggled at the plate. He's a great defensive first baseman, and I think that will only get you so far. And Chris Woodward has, again, not been shy about saying if you can hit, you're going to play. And I think they need somebody who's going to hit. And when they acquired Nate Lowe this winter, John Daniels more or less said, we're acquiring Nate Lowe to be our starting first baseman. But again, Woodward has embraced a culture of competition. He's in his third year as manager. He's really trying to push this. Nothing's going to be given to you. Everything's going to be earned. And Guzman came into camp ready to earn a position. He currently has the highest batting average on the team in the spring. I think it was 600 last time I checked. It could be a few points higher or lower right now. He has 2 home runs. Like I said, he was already fine defensively, but offensively, it's like he's having a complete and total transformation. He hit 160 last year, the major league level. I think only through about 30 games, and he's out of minor league options. And I think he knows that.
Yeah.
Like Odor, I think he sees the writing on the wall, and he sees what he needs to do to be on this team. So he played in the Dominican Winter League this year. He won the Dominican Winter League MVP. He batted like 520 like throughout the season over there.
Crazy.
Like he like completely changed almost everything about him, and you can see he came into the spring, like looking to win his job, and I respect the hell out of him for that. I mean, I how can you not? And I think, not saying that Nate Lowe has played poorly or anything. I think he's definitely not playing to the degree that Guzman is. And he's also trying to win a spot. I think, again, they haven't been shy about saying you have to earn this, and everybody has to earn it. And they I don't want to say they backtracked on what they said, but they did say that, yes, we did want to acquire Nate Lowe from Tampa to be a first baseman, but again, he had to come in and like take it. And
Right.
he hasn't yet proven that. So I think that's definitely going to be one of the most interesting things to watch about this team down the stretch, as we inch closer to April 1st.
Yeah, a lot of those position battles, even with the Angels, are being interesting to say. Our first base battle, or the fourth outfield position battle. I always think those are the funnest things to watch, because like you mentioned, like there's some people there that already know their spots are already kind of secured. It's always fun to watch the ones that are kind of on the border. So a lot of people like to ask, okay, what's your record going to be at the end of the year? Blah blah blah. But I know, as we're seeing with the Astros, injuries can pop up at any time, and can totally kind of derail a season or just kind of delay it a little bit. So what I like to ask is, whatever team wins the AL West, what do you think that win total will be?
That's a really good question. My initial thought, and what I had thought for kind of quite a while, I was kind of expecting the Astros to still be kind of atop the division this coming year. I'm not totally sure about that. I think obviously it's pretty much between the Astros and the A's right now. Let me think. Like, I don't think anybody in the division is winning more than like 90 games.
Oh wow.
Like,
okay. Yeah, I mean, we've gotten a couple. Go ahead.
I feel like this is a division where, at least this year, where everybody's kind of going to beat up on each other and like that type of thing. And we're not playing in like divisional pods like they were last year, but it still feels like there's not a clear cut best team in this division this year.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah,
and like when you look at like some of the central divisions, like it felt like nobody wanted to win in this offseason. It's like, yes, it's basically the Cardinals and everybody else.
Right.
And I mean, both Eastern divisions were kind of like arms racing it out. And I think, like the Braves, the Yankees, the Blue Jays on the East Coast were really, loading up. But, I'm gonna go Astros. I think I'm gonna go Astros. And I'm gonna go like, give me maybe like 93 and 69.
Okay, that's not too bad. I mean, honestly, that's
a very random number out of my
But honestly, we've asked a couple people. You're like our third team we previewed, and all the people asked the same question to them, and they all been around that 90. I think 93 to 95 was that kind of sweet spot where a lot of people felt comfortable doing it. But I agree completely. This, the Astros didn't do a ton to get themselves better, and same thing with the A's. They didn't do a ton to get better. And then if the Angels can just get kind of healthy,
right,
we can make a run at it. But I don't think there's like you mentioned with the Cardinals. I think they're the frontline favorite in the Central, but the NL Central. But I think in the West, I don't think there is one really right now.
Right, exactly. And I think things have to fall into place for whatever team ends up coming out on top of this division. And Astros need a bounce back year. A's need to pretend they know how to play baseball or something. Like just the Mariners and the Rangers are here for a good time. The Mariners and the Rangers are on pretty much the same rebuild schedule right now.
You talked about being in the middle a little while ago. That's where the Angels have been, it seems like, for the past 5-6 years. So we know how that middle is, where your draft pick is at, it's 15. It's like, oh, great, right in the middle. So we've been there a couple of times. But Kennedi, I want to thank you again for taking some time out and previewing the Texas Rangers as we get closer and closer to opening day, April 1st. And for people that want to check out her Twitter page is Ken Landry. That's with 2 N's on Twitter. Definitely give her a follow. And, it's always good to see when Texas is coming in or the Angels are going out to Texas to kind of see are they healthy? Are they on a roll? Are they on a slump? Like I always like checking in on the other teams when that happens. So Kennedi, thank you again. I really, really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.